support, child support and spousal support. Can you guys just give our viewers or listeners the perspective from the Rhode Island court on what that looks like?
Sorry.
Well, child support is a calculation, blessedly. What it is it, well, and not blessedly, it takes into account individuals' gross, not net, monthly income, and it plugs it in given certain factors and information in a state guideline that was come up with by individuals on a much higher pay grade than myself. And it delivers a number at the bottom that is based on a percentage of everybody's income of what should be paid to the children. The court typically sees that as a floor and not a ceiling. So some people get that number and go, oh boy, okay, that's the max that I could pay. Oh, no, friend. That's normally the minimum. If you're going a traditional litigation route, if you're in a mediation status, then there's certainly more flexibility and room around that. Alimony, spousal support, there is no traditional formalized calculation in the state of Rhode Island. I know some of our neighboring jurisdictions have been wise enough and kind enough to put a calculation in. We are not one of those. So there's factors that the court looks at. It is a sliding scale, so to say, and I found, and I'm sure Carrie will confirm, it can be very judge dependent, right? So we have some judges that traditionally may be very anti alimony and spousal support given the circumstances, and we have some that maybe are a little bit more lenient and will apply the factors more generously than others. So that's
so
where
if
it
you
kind
can't
of
come,
sits.
if you can't come to an agreement, right, on the amount and length of spousal support, then that could be one of the factors that might hold you up. Part of what I do is the cash flow analysis, income analysis. What does the division of assets look like, and what does each party need to support themselves? It's not a one-sided thing. It's not the person who is maybe underemployed. We're not only thinking of them, we're thinking of both parties collectively as a unit, as a family. What is the collective income? And if one party is unemployed or underemployed, we have a path to where they need to get rehabilitated. I mean, it's rehabilitative in nature in the state of Rhode Island. So we have to try to get a path to rehabilitation where they're financially independent and self-supporting.
Right.
Right. So,
Rehabilitative is a not forever, right? It's to get them
yeah.
back on their feet, back in the workforce,
Yeah.
back to being self-sufficient, not
Yeah.
just.
So
There it is,
it's
I say.
typically, I mean, it's a short-term time frame. It doesn't even matter if we've come up against 30, 35-year marriages, and the spousal support's like pretty short term, right?
Yeah.
The other factor that we look at is, if one party's, like, say both parties are retired and someone's been underemployed and they're maybe younger than the retired spouse who was the breadwinner, we could look at the division of assets in a different way. Maybe not, it's not 50-50, maybe it's an offset somewhere, 55-45, 60-40, depending on, the factors that Victoria mentioned. It's like health, station in life, contributions to the marriage, employability of the parties. What am I missing?
Educational background, job
Educational
skills,
background.
job training, the
Yeah.
need of one, the ability of the other. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
multi-factored piece.
Yeah. So this is an art, not a science. It's really where there's a lot of negotiating that happens. There's a lot of back and forth on this topic of spousal support. But hopefully I can lend some credence and some background as to why this may work or not work for both parties, right? Depending on how the agreements are going.
Right. And I mean, something the court does, and you raised, Jane, look at is what are the assets that people are taking from the marriage or leaving the marriage with, right? So, somebody who may not have a, job experience, work experience, but they're taking half the assets, but they're the beneficiary of a trust that's not subject for division, right? A court may look very differently on that individual compared to somebody who is only taking the assets, that they have of their marriage, and they've never worked a job and they have no skills. So it truly is so situational dependent. I forewarn my clients though that Rhode Island traditionally and typically is not an alimony or spousal support friendly state, that you will be expected to stand on your own feet rapidly. And so that's something for many folks to be aware of.
Yeah, we do a lot of career coaching, thinking about next chapters, next steps. It's all part of our conversations. It's all good stuff.
My short perspective on that is every marital unit knows more what's going on in their lives than the judge will, the lawyers will, even the mediators will. So although people might resist the concept of support because it's the word alimony, it's a body of work, it's a package. If you, depending on how long you've been married, alimony considerations are probably coming into play with a more long-term marriage, 10 to 20 years, maybe 5 to 10, maybe 5 to 15, but nonetheless, if there's a need for support of one or the other, it's right in front of the parties. They already know it. They know that whether they even agree upon why mom stayed home or dad stayed home, they stayed home and no one did anything about it. So now it's a matter of rehabilitating, a word that we don't like, but it's what the law says, someone back into the workforce. Everyone needs to know that unless they're much older, they will be rehabilitated back into the workforce. So I always come back to, do you want to spend it on lawyers or do you want to invest it into the equation in the mediation? If the delta is 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is, that's potential alimony, why are you spending it on lawyers to rebuff it or seek it when you could be investing it from the marital pot of the value? The facts won't go away. A judge will consider those issues. If you've been married a short-term marriage, that's not an alimony case. But if you have not been in the workforce, if you've left skills that you had that have to be redeveloped, the court will consider all that. And both parties should sit in the mediation setting and consider all that. Once again, in this circle of Victoria giving that advice or legal information, in a mediation setting, it can be resolved. If the delta is $1 million, then that's not going to be easily resolved. But Jane and I have a case right now where the person's seeking that large of a delta difference. After speaking with lawyers, they were told they're not going to accomplish that. So returning back to the mediation table to reallocate, is it assets? It doesn't always have to be a payment. It can be the shifting certain assets now so that one person is not paying later.
Or
In short,
covering,
right.
oh, I was going to say, or covering healthcare as part of the support package, or covering the car payment that was run through the business for all the years, and the cell phone payments. Like, we look at this holistically from a big picture and try to quantify all the benefits that they've agreed to wrap that into sort of a spousal support package.
Right.
Let's
Well, and
say,
there's the
how
short.
much is it going to cost and how am I going to make out? The how am I going to make out should be a mutual decision. What's fair to both so that with children or without children, they feel that they handled it fairly. If people don't want to handle it fairly and they want to litigate it, ultimately at the other end, their assessment will still be, wow, I spent a lot of time and a lot of money. And what did I really get out of it? If you end up paying the $50,000, but it cost you $50,000, it really cost you $100,000.
Yeah.
And so the facts are right in front of the parties at all times. The best way is to mediate.